Run this computer. I would like to welcome everybody to the next installment of this class. I'm really excited that you're all here with us. A few things that I always like to remind people of at the beginning of this class. One, you should participate. The Jewish mystical tradition had a long tradition of not teaching these things in public, specifically because of the fear of, I don't know, taking it wrong or getting it wrong and the import that would have. So obviously we're ignoring that. We're not doing that, but that's fine. But if we're going to do that, then it is helpful that people should really chime in. The second piece of that is that the text is kind of like a door or a gate, even in its own self-referential understanding, to enter into an altered state of consciousness or another place. It's kind of a vehicle, as are letters. So, so your contributions make the class. That's the point. I can only muddle through so much before I need your input to make the class alive. So contribute, please, if you have something to say or ask. Second piece is that a lot of this literature references Sfirot and other systems, which are easier to work with as you know more about them, but can be confounding. Just the terminology can be confounding often. So push through that. Note any urges. I don't understand even what we're talking about. That's okay. You can always ask. But if you find yourself breaking your teeth, so to speak, or whatever the expression is, that's okay. It does rather quickly begin to melt, as I think participants in this very class probably could affirm. Those are my introductions. And with that, I think we're ready to start. So, I just see a few new people in the class, actually. So I just want to give those people a chance to do a brief introduction if they want. You could just say your name and what you hope to get, or if there's not a hope to get, that's fine too.
Okay, I'm new. I'm Peter Salson. My wife Sarah and I just moved to Providence a few weeks ago. We lived for 30 years in Syracuse. Now we're both retired, and we're happy to be in Providence. And I've always wanted to know more about the Zohar, Kabbalah, so I'm here to learn.
Awesome. Awesome.
Welcome to Rhode Island and to our class.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
My name is Jenny, and I am friends with Elisa. I actually interviewed her for an article recently, and she had mentioned this class and how interesting she found it. So it sounded very interesting to me also. So I just am kind of like sneaking in to see what it's about and to learn more because I find it very interesting. So.
Great, welcome. And we'll have to check out the article, assuming the article is a real article.
It really is. I will send a link.
Oh, that would be great.
Where will the article be, and where did you?
It's for Motif magazine.
Okay.
It was just on different spiritual and religious practices that people are participating in through Corona, other than just church services, since that's what was in the news mostly. And so I was trying to get a variety of viewpoints.
Interesting. Thank you.
Sure. So, and we have one more person joining in there in the waiting room. So we'll group this or self-classify it in study as, welcome Andrew, study as a spiritual practice through the intellect, but as a soulful practice. Okay. While we're studying letters, shout out about a new book that is out there that you may want to check out. Okay, the article in Motif is in the chat. Thank you. We'll check that out. A great publication, Motif. There's a new book by Ariel Evan Mays, I don't know if I'm pronouncing his last name correctly, on the Maggid of Mezrich, who was one of the early founders of the Hasidic movement, and his linguistic theory, his theory of language, as crucial to the mystical experience. So that is pretty related, actually, to, it's an academic book, UPenn Press. So, with all the caveats about academic books, noting we have some academics on the call, so it's I don't want to say dense, it's the wrong word, but it is dense. But it is about words as having a power to be traced back. His introduction is a really interesting sort of cross-cultural comparison of words as mystical, as opposed to, and this is what I took from this framing, as opposed to silence as the primary mystical field. Right? I think a lot of us assume like mystical, well, there's a limit to what words can express, certainly ineffable concepts or experiences which move beyond language or even beyond the physical realm, perhaps, experiences that are more real than real. And so to what extent can words describe them? We usually think of words as failing, but this presents a counterclaim that there are traditions, among them Jewish traditions, and among them Kabbalistic traditions about letters, which say no. So I'm framing the teaching we're about to do in case you're lost. Letters and words aren't only, and sometimes yes, but aren't only in conflict with the spiritual experience, which seems so hard to capture in words, but actually can be the creators of it, the vehicle for it, or can be used to embellish and create that environment, which is a different way of understanding language. Language not as a construct in conflict with experience, but in this case, language is shaping mystical experience. So I offer that as a sort of a theory. And now we'll go to the text. So we'll do what we always do, which is read the Aramaic. And then I think people like that because it's beautiful and it gives some resonance for people familiar with it. But then we'll study it in the English that I think everyone is happy working in, myself included. So we were discussing the letters of the alphabet, as you may recall. Audition before God to be the first letter of the Torah. And there's a sense in which this audition, I think of it like a play, tells us something profound about the nature of reality and about the nature of letters, communication, connection. It's what's emerged from the class, and maybe the point of revelation and of study. That the Torah is a revealed document that we study, and so we're asking kind of what's the point of this intersection. So let me just find the spot. Ooh. What happened here? Sorry. Hopefully you didn't read and it's not spoiled. So I think we're up to the letter Pei. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
So Alat at Pei Amra Kameh Ribon Almin. Nicha kamach lemivre bi alma daha porkina da ant zamin lemed bad ba alma bi rishim bidau bidut vi yaut lemivre alma amar la yaut ant aval bach itrishim pesha bitmiru kigavna dechiva demache va'el resha ben gufe hachi man dechav kafif resha va'api yadoy. Okay, v'chein ayin avon af agav de amra de'it be'anava amra lakut shabrichu lo ivre ba'af alma nafkat mikame. So here, two letters come and one for the price of one, Pei and ayin. There is almost a sense that it's a little abbreviated. Here we are. Okay, does everyone see the letter Pei entered? Do you see
Yes.
the English now? Yeah, okay. So the letter Pei entered. She said to him, Master of the worlds, may it please you to create the world by me, for I signify porkina, the redemption, that you will someday bring to the world, also called, one note also, I'm using an online file of this, which I've noted is a little different than the actual book I have. There are like slight differences in footnotes and other things, so I don't know what that's about. I may be using a proto edition of the actual published edition if you're in the book, like some words here and there. But okay, I signified porkina, the redemption, that you will someday bring to the world, also called pedut, deliverance. It is fitting to create the world by me. So the main difference here, I think, is one of Aramaic or Hebrew, in the sense here that this letter Pe can mean not just salvation, like being saved, but the redemption. I think the emphasis is in like a final redemption, like a messianic redemption, a future utopia. So I signify, so in this case, the claim, always methodologically ask, when Pe is saying I should start the Torah because I'm the redemption, I'm the finished, completed world, are we saying, query, that the world as created, because we're talking about creation is the first episode of the book, is the point of the world? And therefore, if the world is created as perfect, it could be that human interference, this is my commentary now, is bad. And this gives an ecological slant, right, on the teaching, in a sense, that human industrialization and degradation of the environment would be anathema. Or are we saying, porkina, that there's something about the partnership of human advancement in the divine plan, which is crucial to the creation. Even the creation itself isn't complete until we partner in some kind of fix, which would fit more with the sort of mystical theology has been referenced so far, where the world is created from our perspective, because we're the ones studying the document. Maybe not objectively, but from our eyes, Patach Einayim, the opening of our eyes, the point of the world is for our partnership in the redemption of the world. It could be, I feel like I can't teach this and not note the world we're in. I should have maybe started with that, actually, and I apologize for just jumping in. Maybe that's callous. Is that, this is an important thing on a lot of our minds. Like, how do we, and it's not easy or obvious, right? How do we fix or repair a broken world or society, or both? And that is manifesting in so many painful ways. So that would be the claim here, that this is it, that the creation is about this process of fixing it, or that, okay, 2 readings, also called, it is fitting to create the world by me. He replied, you are seemly. Seemly here means what? It means you're like attractive, attractive. So seemly is not a word people use. I don't want to make it crass, but
people say like, unseemly, right? That's
right. No, that's a euphemism. But here, right, it's you are seemly, but attractive somehow seems more real to me. But you signify hidden transgression, like a serpent. And by the way, and it's not noted here, but the word transgression used is pesha. Pesha is, there are different words for sin in Hebrew, and actually they occur in like a forgiveness liturgy throughout. And one of them is pesha or pshia, and that generally is thought to mean a kind of negligent transgression, right? So actually this is also good to think about the Hebrew words for this, right? Pshia is like, I should have known better but didn't and did something wrong, which could be used to describe many systems of transgression that we might take part of on learning. I always like to just think about my own life and the ways in which things I thought or did some years ago would now seem transgressive to me now, as a later iteration of myself, or as sort of, you can think about Pshia in your own maybe moral development as a human. So that's, Pesha starts with the letter Pe, so it has the same letter. Like a serpent striking, then tucking its head into its body. This was helpful. Yesterday, actually, there were 2 snakes that decided to crawl right over my feet while I was on a phone call in my garden. Garter snakes, nothing to write home about here. But I was actually just about to study this text, and there were snakes again, and I was thinking like someone's trying to tell me something. The shape of the letter, at least in the alphabet that we have it here, you see the letter here, it's like it tucks in, right? So there's something about they're saying that something about a snake, the way it like curls up and in. So one who sins bows his head, stretching out his hands. Somehow the letter itself is the posture of sin. There's like both a shame and a deception, I would say, are 2 elements to the curling in of the letter, like hiding. Could be like shame, but it also in the case of the snake, I think most clearly also is deceptive is the idea of the snake. Now, this is the time where I'll ask for input. What, if anything, is the Zohar claiming about the relationship between redemption, Messiah, utopia, fixing the world, and sin or transgression? Like, is this an accident, or are these concepts, not just the letters related, but the concepts? Do you understand what I'm asking?
Presumably, sin is opposed to redemption or delivery because pay can represent redemption, but it also represents this other thing which is inconsistent with redemption. So that's one connection. They're opposed, redemption and sin.
Okay. So in this case, sin would be an obstacle to redemption.
And I wonder if that you mentioned it's a specific category of sin, a negligent sin, which sounds like a smaller kind of sin as opposed to a more heinous one. So I wonder if that's also particularly relevant. So if sinning is opposed to the redemption, presumably performing mitzvot is promoting the redemption. So you get that sort of Kabbalistic idea that a mitzvah is part of the tikkun olam. But that is specifically this kind of sin I found I don't know what to make of it. I find interesting that the negligence, why that's playing such a big role here.
Yeah, and I think when we speak about, they use the term hidden transgression, but I think it almost means hidden to us. And actually, this is a powerful term right now. There could be something about redemptions which are superficial often, and sort of hide or cover over hidden sins in a way that even redemption in and of itself is like an enemy to redemption. Or if you wanted to think about this in the chart of Sfirot, redemption is often thought of. We're not really doing this now, but I am going there. So for people who know, right, the emanation of all being is the play art of the Zohar. And so we start with nothingness and move to a place where manifest being exists. And here, this place of endurance, or eternity, or victory, or a battle sometimes, is considered the place of tikkun olam in the mystical tradition. And note that it is just one leg in a balance of many things. Here it's balanced with appreciation or gratitude, because often it's hard to maintain a desire to fix or transform things and a gratitude for them in one thing, their attention. So there could be a way in which fixing redemption, the quest for redemption at least, as an end or a beginning is seen as problematic. And then in that case, this is a tentative read I'm giving of it. What would be the problem is that the desire to fix things is often right. It's rooted in kindness and justice. It's rooted in loving kindness. It's on the right side. The right side is loving kindness. What would be the issue? The issue is that it could lead to a lack of pause or introspection that would cover over other sin. So in that case, what am I saying? I guess I'm saying something specific. So I'm thinking of Rav Kook. Rav Kook wrote an essay about, this isn't a critique per se, but Rav Kook wrote an essay about Christianity in World War I. And there he claimed that, in speaking about Christian supersessionism and Jewish relations, he felt that Christianity had done something superficial to the deep morality of the Jewish mitzvah structure, and that there was a reason that Europe was having such a brutal, violent war that wasn't unrelated to covering over certain things. And so he related, I'm not doing that. I'm not saying that's about Christianity.
We need each other more than ever. We may be apart, but we're not alone. Use AARP.
Did someone say something?
Find or create a mutual.
Sounds like radio backdrop. Maybe people should mute.
Those in need.
Is that like someone on my computer, or is it? Okay, cool. I think we're good. It might have been me. So here I think actually we are saying something about redemption as maybe being often superficial. Often redemptions are superficial. The only comment I will give here, and this is maybe in relation to the current climate, maybe this is advice I'm not qualified or to give, but it was interesting. I spoke to Jim Vincent, who people know runs the local NAACP, and I really appreciated what he had to say. He had a lot of important things to say. And he's been an ally in fighting anti-Semitism and other things. And he said, everyone's focused on racism when it's the hot news issue, it's in the news cycle, but there's still going to be racism in 3 weeks when we moved on to the next story that no one knows what apocalypse will happen next in this year, right? And then no one's going to have done anything about it. And I actually wonder if that comment, in a sense, from, I hope he's okay quoting me, it was a private phone conversation, but he's right. Like to the extent that issues exist, and there are a lot of them, they don't get fixed in a 24-hour news cycle. So I think that's sort of what this is saying, actually, maybe. I take Jim Vincent's comment. Of course, I'm reading it in the context of my own mind right now, but that's sort of an example maybe of where this teaching is going, which is that redemptions cover over sin. Okay. Does anyone else have anything they want to add, counter to interpreting this teaching?
Rabbi, I'm puzzled by the use of the term redemption here. I thought the letter Pei was talking about something which, for convenience, I'll call the end of days, or some finite time in the future when there is the redemption. You seem to be using it as something that goes on constantly, covering sin, or as opposed to sin?
Yeah, okay, fair. I'm using redemption in the context of olam haba, which is the word for the afterlife. But in Hebrew, what does it mean? It doesn't mean an afterlife. The translation is the world that is coming. In Aramaic, alma de'ate, the world that is coming. So there's a sense, I think, in Talmudic literature about the Messiah and Zohar, more in the Zohar, that the Messiah is like latent, present in any generation, operative at any moment. And so it's a concept or a construct as much as a date, more than a date. Okay.
Rabbi, I was thinking about the relationship between God and man, God and humans, and how that relates to not just redemption, but this idea of, like when we talk about what did you call it? The play diagram of the
play. I don't know what I called it, but yeah, I know what you mean.
How we're constantly trying to elevate up, constantly, and to me, that's what redemption means. So it's interesting to me that Pei would be not chosen because of that, when it could have completed or at least brought us closer to the partnership and relationship between man and God.
So I think what I'm taking from your comments is Pei had a good claim. Like this was a real, right? Like I've spent so many teaching about how the whole Patach Einayim, which almost started the Zohar, like opening our eyes, the whole point of our consciousness is to be an active role. And the Shavuot teachings is to bring about the Tikkun. But so much of the Zohar has been about not our passive emanation, but our active role in our own co-creation almost. I don't know if it's, but we help create ourselves through consciousness and all of creation thereby. And so that strengthens the claim of Pei, ultimately rejected still for its flaws.
I was thinking in terms of personal redemption, and that a lot of time that occurs after you've committed a transgression. So even though maybe it works after the fact, and I found it also interesting that with the ayin, I guess, which we haven't gotten to yet, it seemed like God was preempting the ayin without even being able to make its case first.
Yeah.
So in both cases, it seems as though you can, redemption is a positive thing, and many times it happens after you've committed transgressions and find a way to to redeem yourself,
Yeah,
afterwards.
this is interesting. I bring in here Tal Ben Shachar's distinction, or others, between psychologically between relief and joy. Relief being the removal of a negative thing, which often is actually quite joyful when a major stressor, anxiety, or wrong. If you've ever been in a conflict with someone and eventually they forgive you, that can be extremely relieving, especially if you're in the wrong, right? Or other reliefs, right? Financial relief for people that have been, there are all kinds of relief, medical. So, but yeah, sin, right? So this is an interesting read. I like that, Marvin, that redemption comes often on the back of sin. And okay, do people see the Aramaic text of the Zohar now? Or the other?
No, we see the Sphira.
The Hebrew.
Okay.
Yeah.
So v'chein ayin, as Marvin mentioned, a good segue, avon. And the next letter, ayin, which is another form of sin. Here, the best translated maybe, we have three words, pesha, avon, and chet. Chet, iniquity. Chet, sin, is often from the letter to miss a mark, like an archer missing the target. So chet is often conceived of as a well-intentioned fail. So maybe failing is a better translation of chet, actually, than sin, but that's how it is. And pshia would be translated, I think, as negligence. And ayin in this case would be translated as iniquity, or just like actual fault, liability. So avagav, so it's avon. So here they don't, all the other letters, they make their claim and then they're rejected. But ayin is just rejected, and then it's like, even though it had this claim, it was rejected. So I don't know if this is a summary or there's some reason which ayin is kind of reversed, related either to its shape or its content. Ayin is a guttural letter. Avon, avagav de amra de it be'anava, even though you could say about it that it has humility, which is also with the letter ayin. Amra kutsubrich lo ivre bacham manafka. But still God said, no, even though ayin has humility, it's rejected. So
maybe it's because he's saying, don't even start with me because you're the same as the other guy. You're also a transgression.
Right. I mean, there could be a thing which is like if a negligent transgression is going to be rejected, all the more so an intentional transgression. There is that sort of logical operative there of an a fortiori argument that seems to be appearing here. Is that the Latin? Am I getting this right from my law school days? Right. If negligent sin is rejected as a disqualifier for starting the world. Now, the question then still, if we're following my methodology, assuming it's correct, is what's the relationship between humility and intentional sin? Not often seen as going together. When I asked myself that question in preparation for this class, after the episode with the snakes, I struggled to come up with anything that wasn't stretched. And so I turned to you, dear folk. Is this not a valid methodology? Is it not true here? Or what's the relationship between humility and sin? Or is sin a form of humility? I mean, you could say, and this is what I rejected, is just stretch, because I'm just saying it because the letters are here, that humility often leads to, false humility often leads to sin, or often false humility is really a manifestation of ego, or that the relationship, I could have made a lot of claims with all kinds of resonance that ego and hubris and pride and narcissism and the sort of continuum of shame and internal belittlement and other things that cause that or relate to that are at the heart of sin. And so since sin is so caught up in our self-esteem or lack thereof and the fragile sense of self-worth, the mixing of these, even though real humility is a tremendously positive quality, it's so fraught, right, that it's rejected as too tenuous. The human, and here then there would be something about the human that's rejected, like is the point of the Torah the human being and their internal self-development or psychological self-development? The answer is, people are really fraught and fragile, and they sin when they break. and sometimes that is bad.
Hmm.
That's what I came up with, but then I rejected that as a stretch. But now it sounds better.
It does.
Not, I mean, one always wants to make the connections, but one doesn't absolutely have to, right? One could just say the letter on the one hand stands for something positive, humility, but on the other hand, it also stands for something negative. In this case, the negative outweighs. So you could say more on the surface if you wanted to, without probing the relationship between them. But I thought Marvin was trying to answer a different question than the one I think you took him to be answering, was why is the narrative structure here different than the other letters? Namely, we're given the reason for the rejection before the letter has had the chance to make its case. And I thought Marvin was suggesting, you put that nice line like, don't even get started. Like you're rejected before you even get started because of the nature of the negative thing. So I thought that was actually quite interesting. And I'm also noticing, if Ayin is promoting her case because of the humility, maybe what we're being told here by this narrative difference, that the rejection is being told before the positive application. Ayin is very humble. Ayin came in with pay, and they made their cases together. Right? Ayin didn't need her own entrance. Right? She came in. She did make her case because God is saying, she said, I imply humility. So she obviously made the case, but we're being told about that after she made the case. So I think she came in with pay because she's so humble and didn't need her own entrance.
I like that. That must be what's going on here, is a bit of stage art in the text, right? Which is that, like, Ayin, to the extent that Ayin spoke, which is reported, it's not even like, it's not really reported in its narrative. It's only
narrated after the case. Yeah.
I was going to say, excuse me just a sec. I was going to say, it also sounds a bit like too much humility is actually not a good thing, because what it doesn't do is recognize the reality of what it is. So coming in with pay is being subservient in a way, and therefore that subservience of humility, which is too kind of below the other, makes it a letter that you wouldn't want to begin with, because it doesn't look at the world and reality as it truly is. It undermines it and makes it less. If you,
I like that.
Also, I mean, how humble can a letter be if it has to point out that it's humble?
But,
good point.
But even after Ayin was rejected, Ayin tried to argue, but was ignored. She couldn't have been that humble.
Wait, where are you getting that?
Ayin tried to object, but the creator refused it nonetheless.
I don't have that.
Okay, so it's interesting. In the Hebrew text here, now I'm realizing things I didn't realize before. Afagav de Amra de Itbanava. So they're translating that here in the Sfaria as rejected, but really the translation in the Aramaic here is, look, I'm going to reject you even though you claim you're humble. But actually the humility isn't associated with Ayin. It's suggested as, it's like you say you're humble. And there's a sense in which that claim is never taken. It's not rejected, but it's not accepted. Either. So the claim of humility, really, like how humble can you be? Someone just said it. There is a skepticism here about humility and its value as often false or deceptive and related to sin. So actually, I'm going to go with this now that we see the whole stagecraft here. Ayin maybe not saying so much and trying to be humble and being told by God, you think you're humble, you say you're humble, but you're also sinful. Okay.
I just want to point out that the Sepharia translation is just enough different from is this Matt? Is that the one the book?
Yeah.
That it actually affects this question about the narrative structure fairly significantly.
Right here it says, although she said I imply humility.
Right. So I took that to be God recounting the earlier conversation where she made her case. I imply humility, so you should choose me, and he rejected it. Whereas in the Sepharia translation, it sounds much more like God preempted and just said, "You're out before you make the case." And then this is an objection to God's rejection of her. So it actually really changed, the two translations changed the dynamic.
Yeah, the question is this word "although she said" or "although she claimed"? Kind of like
although they translated it Sepharia as objected. So objection implies that this is said after God rejects her. Whereas in this English, it sounded like he was telling what happened a few minutes ago. Like she earlier said, "I imply humility." So the order of events depends on the translation here.
Yeah, and the translation is ambiguous.
The original is ambiguous.
I think so. I think this ambiguity is present. So,
can I make one more brief observation?
Observations are welcome.
I'm wondering, it doesn't seem that the letter "pay" actually leaves the presence. Almost all the other letters it says, and they left his presence. But it doesn't say that for "pay" for some reason. So I don't know what that means.
Huh. There could be more stagecraft here, which is that sin we don't recognize.
3 generations, the company store has been dedicated to providing premium.
I never know. I have all these windows open. I never know if I have like a news ad playing or something, or I'm not reading them. I'm obviously with you, but all right. So, so it could be, and just it's not in there or it's a version issue, but it could be, right, that there's in the same way that Ayin is being personified as humble, as a humble character, Pei is being personified as lacking self-awareness, because Pei never leaves. It's like even after rejected, Pei never leaves, and that could be related to the nature of negligence. It's like you never shake it. You just keep repeating the same mistake because you're not aware of it.
Maybe she just tucked her head into her body.
Yeah, or maybe that alone is like leaving. Okay, yeah. Pei is also the snake. So there's a sense in which the snake is present in the Garden of Eden and sort of continues to haunt this divine plan of creation. But the snake is like a real, okay. Samach, next letter. Alat at samach amra kamei ribon almen. Nicha kamach lemivribi alma. Di snicha la noflin dechtiv. So mecha donoi lachol hanoflim amar la. Alda an tzarich la atrach la tazuz mine. Iat nafik me atara ma tehealayhu. Di inun nefilin halvi inun smichin alach. Miad nafkat mikamei. So the letter Samach enters. She said to him, "Master of the worlds, may it please you to create the world by me, for by me smicha, support." This is the letter for Somech exists for those who fall. As it is written that God supports all who fall. And so this is the word of support of those who fall. So here the claim is that the Torah or Revelation is about supporting those who fall. It's a document to uplift the downtrodden or to encourage us to do so. It's about support and help for the fallen. Now, there is a Talmud which actually is a famous Talmud in Sanhedrin, which they have one of the sages, maybe it's Rabbi Yochanan, maybe I'm getting it wrong, who comes and meets the Messiah in heaven and asks the Messiah, or sees the Messiah helping those in need, like making garments for those that don't have them. And so there's this aspect of that idea that is also prevalent in a lot of the Talmudic literature and maybe related to the messianic notions that we were dealing with just prior in the Pei Ayin unit. In any event, I don't know if that's true, I'm just noting it. He replied, "So you are needed where you are. Do not move. If you leave, what would happen to the fallen who depend on you? she immediately left his presence. So if you like stop your help to start the Torah, then the people you're helping won't be helped. So there's this interesting thing going on, right? Which is like like we assume starting the Torah is a good thing, and that the letters are rejected because of some negative quality. But here starting the Torah is equivalent somewhat to like the limelight or the fame. And actually a lot of times the people in the limelight like neglect those who need them most, or their families or loved ones or friends or whatnot. As a rabbi, I can't say how many people I've counseled in relationships who have come and their need to be liked or famous somehow, or to do things that isn't really essential, gets in the way of those who actually need their support. And certainly clergy themselves are not immune to this malady. So that's how I'm reading it here, is that actually support for the needy exists outside of this sort of prominent space, or that it happens in ways that aren't always famous and seen, or aren't obvious, and that they're often quiet. The support, the nature of support is often quiet and behind the scenes, and it needs to be that way. Reflections, comments?
Mm-mm.
I'll have to know, and if someone has a comment as they ponder that, that kind of, what's nice about these teachings is that they seem to like start to get repetitive, and then the narrative breaks the format a little in different ways, with the Pei and the Ayin as a group and switching the order, and now Samach is rejected by saying, well, actually, like, your role is more important than starting the Torah in some ways. You're not needed here, you're needed elsewhere.
Well, there's one thing, I don't know if it's a little bit different. I don't remember some of the earlier letters now, but Samech is making her case by saying, I'm connected to Smicha, but the verse in question is Hashem Somech. So the Samech is an action of God. So there's a sort of intimacy here. You should create the world by me because I already represent an action that you do, namely support all who fall. So it's not just some virtue in the world or some other thing. It's Samech is specifically connected to God's own actions in a very intimate way. And I don't know if that's
right. God is identified as supporting the fallen. That's a
one who does the Somech, right?
Yeah. So, and can be found there. And so there could be a mystical claim here. Where can you find God? Like, God is found in the support of, like, God supports those who are fallen. And so in that case, there could be a mystical claim that God is found, if we wanted to look at it that way. Where is Revelation beginning? Where is God found? In support of but actually that needs to be like its own thing. And there might be a claim here also about the theological framing of support, now that we're mentioning this or not, which is that, like, one could go into like an act of like loving kindness to someone who needs it with a religious overtone or a theological overtone, like, I'm going to discover God in this. I don't know if I'm thinking of like Mother Teresa as like an example of a saint known for helping those in need. And this is not a critique of Mother Teresa. I don't mean to do that here. I'm just saying, maybe they're making a claim like, no, support of, like, in other words, that is something God does, but support of that needs to be fully present in some way, and not ulterior. That real support, by definition, I don't know, can't be involved in this sort of your personal mystical quest. I don't know, that could be a stretch, but what I'm saying sounds true to me, even if it's not the point of the text. Alat at nun amra kameh. So nun comes again connected because of the samech noflim, to all the fallen. The nun is fallen. Amra kameh ribon alma nicha kamach lemivri bi alma deviktiv norati lot utihila tzadikim nabatila amra la nun tuv la trach deha begivach tavat samech la trava vesmicha la miad tavat la tarav nafkat mikameh. The letter Nun entered. She said to him, Master of the world, may it please you to create the world by me. For by me you are called No Ra. Awesome. But here, awesome, like meaning in its full sense of the word, like containing awe and praises. By me, the praise of the righteous is called Nava, comely. So there are two claims in the initial part of this that are really different. One is that the world is created for cultivation of awe of God. If anyone's read Heschel's work, God in Search of Man, I think he makes a claim like this, that the ultimate religious pursuit is the cultivation of what he calls radical amazement, which is, I think, his working term for awe, which is constantly being like even amazed at our amazement, which is why he calls it radical amazement. There's a meta or squared sense to the amazement of like not just appreciating the world, like, oh, it's a beautiful day, but being amazed at our capacity to be able to be amazed and just sitting in wonder at all of it in a sort of kind of like an echoing wonder might be actually that keeps reverberating more and more deeply. So that's sort of, I think, what they're getting at here. Maybe the cultivation of that sensibility is the point of this revelation. And by me, and through that, the praise of the righteous is called Nava, through the letter Nun. The praise that the right, so God is called Norah, and how is he Norah? In Tehilot, in praises. When we praise God, the point of praising God in this understanding is to cultivate the awe of God. But here, awe of God means awe of the emanation, because we're in the Zohar, remember? And the notion of God as capital G, O-D, is being redefined as this emanative thing that we're a dynamic part of, yes? That's constantly energized and flowing. And so being in awe at everything we're studying, at the nature of our unity with a dynamic and spiritual and energetic, beautiful, painful in some of the passages and in real life world. So Norah Tehilot, through praises, and by me the praise of the righteous is called Nava. And then when the righteous do that praise, like when you engage in that, that's comely, that's beautiful, that's attractive. So there's something not just about God, but there's a way in which Nun encapsulates the praiser and the praisee into a merging. It's the same letter, which may be about what the Zohar is saying about how through an act of praise and awe and submission, we're able even to merge or come to unity. So he replied, Nun, return to your place. For because of you, Samach returned to her place, because Samach needed to support those who fell. And so Nun was, for fallen people, depend on her. So she returned immediately, leaving his presence. Assuming we're trying to do what I've been trying to do the whole time, what's the relationship between praising God and cultivating awe, in this case through praise, and being like attractive in that way, and being fallen? So here actually, I thought maybe the Zohar is making a point that the Hasidim later made, and maybe will resonate for you now, sort of notion of Ein Shalim Kalev Nishbar, there's nothing so whole as a broken heart, or that actually in our world, because of the state of the current world, when we're able to cultivate the sort of awe at the beauty of the world, there's also a recognition often in those states of the pain or brokenness that comes right on it. There's something about the world, our world, which is one of exile and discord. And actually these things bleed into each other, that one can't cultivate a real awe or appreciation without moving to the other. Let me say it in the Sefirot language to help you. Hod, which is where one might appreciate the splendor of the world, here is on the left side, which is a size of restriction or justice. And so it has an element of gratitude or appreciation of beauty, but it also has a notion of presence with pain or brokenheartedness. And so there could be this element conceptually merging, as it were, that there's something about being fallen and brokenhearted that's related to the cultivation of this quality. In other words, a real mystic is going to go through like great highs and lows, or as they describe it in some literature, ratso v'sho, feel connected and then feel total void in a back and forth, coming and going. That's often the term used in the Jewish literature to describe the mystical experience. The angels in Ezekiel are described as coming and going, and the mystics identified as coming and going, approaching God and retracting, being close and feeling pain as a sort of a play. And so here there's something in that broken place, which is where you depend on God's support when you're distant, ironically. And so there's a notion of the righteousness of dependence. Here I'll just note the ethical teaching that it is often very hard to ask for help when we are in a place of isolation or pain, because the nature of isolation is self-compounding. We want to solve problems all on our own when we're isolated, and when we're sad and isolated, we become less likable to others. So usually, most people. So I think there is, like, depend on her is not just a throwaway line. It's an active teaching that the act of reaching out for help is a spiritual practice as well. But that something, because of this, nun is rejected as starting the Torah. What wasn't clear to me, and maybe some other thought, is why is this a rejection? Because of a dependency? Like, why is she rejected? Or anyone else have thoughts in general?
Well, you can't have support unless there's a need for support, so there has to be fallen. So you would think that samech depends on nun, but in fact, at the same time, what is the point or purpose of fallenness unless there's some way of rectifying or supporting it? So also nun depends on samech. It's kind of a symmetrical dependence.
And maybe because of the symmetrical dependence between those two things, you can't start the Torah because you're like two letters, you're a unit. Maybe that's the point. There's something with the dependent nature here, which renders it like improbable to start the Torah with like like they go together.
Mm-hmm.
Now maybe we'll try one more letter, which in this case is kind of three. and here picking up on this because the three come in a row, but also form an important word, which is part of the Zohar's play. And this will be the last letter we do. Alat at mem amra kameri bonama. Are people seeing the Aramaic I switched to?
Mm-hmm.
It got melech. Amar lahachi hu vadai. Avala ribach ama begin da ama israch lemelech tu vatrach. Ant vilamid v'chav dahalayot la ama lemekam b'lamelech. So the man, excuse me. She said to him, Master of the world, may it please you to create the world by me, for by me you are called Melech, king. In the mystical literature, king, which is a foreign concept to most of us, I think, in most ways, really means kingship, which is immanence, divine immanence, which is the full realization or connection of the beautiful potential of the world with its actuality. And so when we say, because what in the ancient, in the Zohar's mind of king, I'm not a scholar of this, but there's a sense in which the benevolent monarch is providing for all of the needs of the people individually with success. And so there's a sense in which all of the specific things that go on in the kingdom are taken care of by the king. So that becomes the metaphor, I think a difficult metaphor for us for representing the fullness of the promise of divine goodness manifest in the world. But I think the way to think about this in a modern context is the alignment between between an idealized world and our world, when our world matches with its better angels, so to speak. So Mem makes this is a strong claim, Melech, king. He replied, certainly so. But I will not create the world by you, since the world needs a king. Return to your place, you along with Lamed and Chaf, the next two letters in the alphabet and the next two letters of the word king, for the world should not be without a king. This is similar to the way other letters have been rejected in a certain way, which is like, well, the world needs a king, the same way Samech needs to support the fallen, the king needs to support the world. But here it's a more radical claim, because here the king is the Shekhinah. So like maybe the start of the Torah should be divine immanence, should be like the point of revelation is the immanence of divinity. But actually the immanence of divinity is busy with the affairs of the world. There's something about, now it could be a claim of a politics that political utopias are the end of the Torah or the beginning of the Torah. I don't know. It's possible they're making that claim and saying, well, politics is like maybe a mystic should go into politics and run for office. And I don't know if they're thinking that or not, but the sense is that that's like too focused on providing for need. I don't know if that's really what it is, but king is rejected. Let's maybe just see the Chaf for a moment and Lamed, and then we'll have final thoughts and kind of conclude. Bishaita nachatachaf min kadmoi atme al korse yakare is daza ba'amra kame ribonam anicha kamach lemevribiyama da'ant kodach v'chad nachatachaf me al korse yakare is da'azu matan ela almen biz daza korsaya v'chulu almen is da'azu leminpal amar lakut shabrichu kav kav mata biracha delovribiyama tu ve'atrach dahabach kalya dahabach klaya kala v'nechritza Ishtema tuv lechrasech v'have taman v'hishaita nakat mikame v'tabet v'duchta. So, yeah, let me ask, do people have like a moment to go through the Chaf, or do people want to pick up with that next time?
That's good.
Okay, we'll just go with that then. So, at that moment, the letter Chaf descended from his throne. One word here, like Chaf was already eliminated with king, but this is that Chaf has like a final letter and a first letter. Now, what's weird about this a little bit is like, so does the mem and so does the nun, and we didn't deal with their final letter in the thing, so it's a little complicated textually why we're dealing with the final letter of Chaf. But at that moment, the letter Chaf descended from his throne of glory. Throne of glory is kisei ha-kavod. So throne of glory, the Hebrew term for throne of glory has two kafs in it. Both throne and glory start with the kaf. So the kaf has this, the kaf is the throne of glory. Or here the Torah is, starting with kaf, is the throne of glory for God. That's the point of the Torah, is to be a throne of glory. Trembling, she said to him, Master of the world, may it please you to create the world by me, for I am your kavod, your glory. Not actually God, but the stuff we perceive of God, yeah? The stuff we can touch and sense physically. When Chaf descended from the throne of glory, 200,000 worlds trembled, the throne trembled, and all the worlds verged on collapse. The Blessed Holy One said to her, Chaf, what are you doing here? I will not create the world by you. Return to your place, for you imply klaya, destruction. Here, the word trembled is like earthquake in the Aramaic. So like there was earthquakes everywhere, and the world was collapsing. So you implied destruction, a decree of destruction. Return to your throne and stay there. She thereupon left his presence and returned to her place. So there's something about the glory of God which crushes or renders things implausible, not unlike biblical notions of like no one can see the presence of God and live. There's something about full divine glory, which is both dangerous, and the mystical quest, which is dangerous, and that's a warning here. The kisei hakavod, it's important to note, mystics often try to enter that place in Ezekiel of seeing the chariot or the throne of glory of God, the mobile version of it, called the Merkava. So here they're kind of saying, well, that's a dangerous place to be, and also not the point of the Torah. The point of the Torah is not mystical, to be in this fraught mystical place where one is almost touching God. So you might have thought actually the point of the Zohar was to be in that place of this great mystical touching God, to be as close as possible. And actually the answer is no. That would be destructive. Okay. Any final thoughts or comments about these teachings? As always, let them sit with you. You know, we've said a lot today, a lot. I hope, pray, try and take it this way. You know, these teachings are meant to reflect on the nature of reality, not just like to sort of move us away from an us, God, divine, human bifurcation, but to say there's something about the nature of reality which ultimately we emanate in, which is how one senses divinity. And there are great truths here. And the letters, I'll just end with this note, are about a communicative interplay or relationship. And so there's relationship between the letters in some of the teachings we've discussed, but relationships between the concepts, between sin and humility, or between glory and destruction, or between praise and awe and brokenness. And my hope is that some of the language here will begin to allow us to feel okay opening up the inner chambers of our souls a little bit, to start to experience the world, to feel okay in our very, it's a rough society out there, to feel okay having like an inward texture to the way we look at things. Because I think right now a lot of us, maybe I'll just speak for myself, I'm breaking a little, like it's a broken time, and it's okay to be sensitive to like the inner, not narcissistically sensitive. The Ayin warned us about that with its false humility, like not to think that our spiritual sensibility or mood is the end all be all, because it's all about connection, but to be sensitive to the sort of inner movements of our souls in relation to our peers, to each other, to these teachings, and to what's going on, and to form constructive dialogue about how to create a world which maps the divinity it could, how to fulfill potentials. That's part of what the letter teaching is all about. Next time we'll keep going, and we'll get to the grand finale, which is actually really important, you know, not of the rejected letter, but of the accepted letter and its silent counterpart. So I hope you'll tune in next Wednesday, same bat time, same bat channel, here at 3, for the grand finale to the audition of the letters, a mystical ballet. And with that, I bid everyone a good day.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If anyone wants to chat, I'll leave the room here. But